On this recording, I'm going to read to you from Waldo Emerson's book called Nature. It was written 150 years ago. It's a self-help book, and it was used by many scholars of late, and many self-help and improvement books. Authors of such books tend to use quotes from Waldo Emerson's variety of books, including this one. Nature. Before I start, I want to ask you to kindly leave me your feedback, your thoughts, your comments. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And please let me know how you feel about my reading style, if it resonates with you or it doesn't. I look forward to seeing your comments and your feedback. Nature. To go into solitude, a man needs to retire as much from his chamber as from society. I am not as solitary whilst I read and write, though nobody is with me. But if a man would be alone, let him look at the stars. The rays that come from those heavenly worlds will separate between him and what he touches. One might think the atmosphere was made transparent with his design, to give man in the heavenly bodies the perpetual presence of the sublime. Seen in the streets of cities, how great they are. If the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would men believe and adore and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God, which had been shown, but every night come out of the envoys of beauty and light the universe with their admonishing smile. The stars awaken a certain reverence because, though always present, they are inaccessible. But all natural objects make a kindred impression. When the mind is open to their influence, nature never wears a mean experience. Neither does the wisest man extort her secret and lose his curiosity by finding out all her perfection. Nature never became a toy to a wise spirit. The flowers, the animals, the mountains reflected the wisdom of her best hour, as much as they had delighted the simplicity of his childhood. When we speak of nature in this manner, we have a distinct but most poetical sense in the mind. We mean the integrity of impression made by manifold natural objects. It is which distinguishes the stick of timber of the woodcutter from the tree of the poet. The charming landscape which I saw this morning is indubitably made of some 20 or 30 farms. Miller owns this field, like that, and manning the woodland beyond, but none of them owns the landscape. There is a property in the horizon which no man has but he whose eye can integrate all the parts. That is the poet. This is the best part of these men's farms. Yet their warranty deeds give no title. To speak truly, a few adult persons can see nature. Most persons do not see the sun. At least they have a very superficial seeing. The sun illuminates only the eye of the man, but shines in the eye and the heart of the child. The lover of nature is whose inward and outward senses are still truly adjusted to each other, who has retained the spirit of infancy even in the era of manhood. His intercourse with heaven and earth becomes part of his daily food. In the presence of nature, a wild delight runs through the man. In spite of real sorrows, nature says, "He is my creature." Mockery. All his impertinent griefs, he shall be glad with me. Not the sun or the summer alone, but every hour and season yields its tribute of delight. For every hour and change corresponds to and authorizes a different state of the mind. From breathless noon to grimmest midnight, nature is a setting that fits equally well a comic or a morning piece. In good health, the ear is a cordial, incredible virtue. Crossing a bare common in snow puddles at twilight, under a clouded sky without having In my thoughts, any occurrence of special good fortune, I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. I am glad to the brink of fear. In the woods, too, a man casts off his years, as a snake his slough, and at what period soever of life is always a child. In the woods is perpetual youth. Within these plantations of God, a decorum and sanctity reign. A perennial festival is dressed, and the guest sees not how he should tire of them in 1,000 years. In the woods we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, leaving me my eyes, which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all the currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or parcel of God. The name of the nearest friend sounds then foreign and accidental. To be brothers, to be acquaintances, master or servant, is then a trifle and a disturbance. I am the lover of uncontained and immortal beauty. In the wilderness, I find something more dear and connate than in streets or villages. In the tranquil landscape, and especially in the distant line of the horizon, man beholds somewhat as beautiful as his own nature. The greatest delight which the fields and woods minister is the suggestion of an occult relation between man and the vegetable. I am not alone and unacknowledged. They nod to me, and I to them. The waving of the boughs in the storm is new to me and old. It takes me by surprise and yet is not unknown. Its effect is like that of a higher thought or a better emotion coming over me when I deemed I was thinking justly or doing right. Yet it is certain that the power to produce this delight does not reside in nature, but in man, or in harmony of both. It is necessary to use these pleasures with great temperance, for nature is not always tricked in holiday attire, but the same scene which yesterday breathed perfume and glittered as for the frolic of the nymphs is overspread with melancholy today. Nature always wears the colours of the spirit. To a man labouring under calamity, the heat of his own fire hath sadness in it. Then there is a kind of contempt of the landscape felt by him who has just lost by death a dear friend. The sky is less grand, as it shuts down over less worth in the population. Commodity. Whoever considers the final cause of the world will discern a multitude of uses that enter as parts into that result. They all admit of being thrown into one of the following classes: commodity, beauty, language, and discipline. Under the general name of commodity, I rank all those advantages which our senses owe to nature. This, of course, is a benefit which is temporary and mediate, not ultimate, like its service to the soul. Yet although low, it is perfect in its kind, and is the only use of nature, which all men apprehend. The misery of man appears like childish petulance. When we explore the steady and prodigal provision that has been made for his support and delight on the screen board which floats him through the heavens, what angels invented these splendid ornaments, these rich conveniences, this ocean of air above, this ocean of water beneath, this firmament of earth between, this zodiac of lights, this tent of dropping clouds, this strip coat of climates, this fourfold year, beasts, fire, water, stones, and core serve him. The field is at once his floor, his workyard, his playground, his garden, and his bed. More servants wait on man than he'll notice. More servants wait on man than he'll take notice of. End quote. Nature, in its ministry to man, is not only the material, but is also the process and the result. All the parts incessantly work into each other's hands for the profit of man. The wind sows the seeds. The wind sows the seeds. The sun evaporates the sea. The wind blows the vapor to the field. The ice on the other side of the planet condenses rain on this. The rain feeds the plant feeds the animal, and thus the endless circulations of the divine charity nourish man. The useful arts are reproductions of new combinations by the wit of man. Of the same natural benefactors, he no longer waits for favouring gales, but by means of steam, he realizes the fable of Aeschylus back, and carries the 32 winds in the boiler of his boat. To diminish friction, he paves the road with iron bars, and mounting a coach with a shipload of men, animals, and merchandise behind him, he darts through the country from town to town like an eagle or a swallow through the air. By the aggregate of these aids, how is the face of the world changed from the era of Noah to that of Napoleon? The private poor man hath cities, ships, canals, bridges built for him. He goes to the post office, and the human race run on his errands. To the bookshop, and the human race read and write of all that happens for him. To the courthouse, and nations repair his wrongs. He sets his house upon the road, and the human race go forth every morning and shovel out the snow, and cut a path for him. But there is no need of specifying particulars in this class of uses. The catalog is endless, and the examples so obvious that I shall leave them to the reader's reflection, with the general remark that this mercenary benefit is one which has respect to a farther good. A man is fed, not that he may be fed, but that he may work. Beauty. A noble want of man is served by nature, namely the love of beauty. The ancient Greeks called the word, beauty, such as the constitution of all things, or such the plastic power of the human eye, that the primary forms, as the sky, the mountain, the tree, the animal, give us a delight in and for themselves, a pleasure rising from outline, color, motion, and grouping. This seems partly owing to the eyes itself. The eye is the best of artists by the mutual action of its structure and of the laws of light. Perspective is produced, which integrates every mass of objects, of what character soever, into a well-colored and shaded globe, so that where the particular objects are mean and unaffecting, the landscape which they compose is round and symmetrical. And as the eye is the best composer, so light is the first of painters. There is no object so foul that intense light will not make beautiful. And the stimulus it affords to the sense, and a sort of infinitude which it hath, like space and time, make all matter gay. Even the corpse has its own beauty. But besides this general grace diffused over nature, almost all the individual forms are agreeable to the eye, as is proved by our endless imitations of some of them, as the acorn, the grape, the pine corn, the wheat ear, the egg, the wings and forms of most birds, the lion's claw, the serpent, the butterfly, seashells, flames, clouds, buds, leaves, and the forms of many trees as the palm. For better consideration, we may distribute the aspects of beauty in a threefold manner. Number 1. For the simpler perception of nature of natural forms is a delight. The influence of the forms and actions in nature is so needful to man that in its lowest functions it seems to lie on the confines of commodity and beauty. To the body and mind, which have been cramped by noxious work or company, nature is medicinal and restores their tone. The tradesman, the attorney, comes out of the din and craft of the street and sees the sky and the woods, and is a man again. In the internal calm, he finds himself. The health of the eye seems to demand a horizon. We are never tired so long as we can see far enough. But in other hours, nature satisfies by its loveliness, and without any mixture of corporal benefit, I see the spectacle of morning from the hilltop over against my house. From daybreak to sunrise, with emotions which an angel might cheer. The long slender bars of cloud float like fishes in a sea of crimson light. From the earth as a shore, I look into that silent sea. I seem to partake its rapid transformations. The active enchantment reaches my dust, and I dilate and conspire with the morning wind. How does nature defy us? How does nature repeat that. How does nature deify us with a few and cheap elements? Give me health and a day, and I will make the pomp of emperors ridiculous. The dawn is my Assyria, the sunset and moonrise my Paphos, and unimaginable realms of fairy. Broad noon shall be my England of the senses and understanding. The night shall be my Germany of mystic philosophy and dreams. No less excellent except for our less susceptibility in the afternoon was the charm last evening of a January sunset. The western clouds divided and subdivided themselves into pink flakes modulated with tints of unspeakable softness, and the air had so much life and sweetness that it was a pain to come within doors. What was it that nature would say? Was there no meaning in the life repose of the valley behind the mill, and which Homer or Shakespeare could not reform for me in words? The leafless trees became spires of flame in the sunset, with the blue east for their background, and the stars of the dead calyces of flowers, and every withered stem and stubble rimmed with frost contribute something to the mute music. The inhabitants of cities suppose that the country landscape is pleasant only half the year. I please myself with the graces of the winter scenery, and believe that we are much touched by it as by the genial influences of summer. To the attentive eye, each moment of the year has its own beauty, and in the same field, it beholds every hour a picture which was never seen before, and which shall never be seen again. The heavens change every moment, and reflect their glory or gloom on the plains beneath. The state of the crop and the surrounding farms alters in the expression of the earth from week to week. The succession of native plants and the pastures and roadsides, which make the silent clock by which time tells the summer hours, will make even the divisions of the day sensible to a keen observer. The tribes of birds and insects, like the plants, punctual to their time, follow each other, and the year has room for all. By watercourses, the variety is greater. In July, the blue punt adderia or pickerel weed blooms in large beds in the shallow parts of our pleasant river, and swarms with yellow butterflies in continual motion. Art cannot rival this pomp of purple and gold. Indeed, the river is a perpetual gala, and boasts each month a new ornament. But this beauty of nature, which is seen and felt as beauty, is the last part. The shows of day, the dewy morning, the rainbow mountains, orchards in blossom, stars, moonlight, shadows in still water, and the like, if too eagerly hunted, become shows merely, and mock us with their unreality. Go out of the house to see the moon, and it is more tinsel. It will not please as when its light shines upon your necessary journey. The beauty that shimmers in the yellow afternoon in October, whoever could clutch it? Go forth to find it, and it is gone. It is only a mirage as you look from the windows of diligence. Number 2, the presence of a higher, namely of the spiritual element, is essential to its perfection. The high and divine beauty, which cannot be loved without effeminacy, is that which is found in combination with the human will. Beauty is the mark God sets upon virtue. Every natural action is graceful. Every heroic act is also decent, and causes the place and the bystanders to shine. We are taught by great actions in the universe is the property of every individual in it. Every rational creature has all nature for his dowry and estate. It is his, if he will. He may divest himself of it. He may creep into a corner and abdicate his kingdom, as most men do, but he is entitled to the world by his constitution. In proportion to the energy of his thoughts and will, he takes up the world into himself. All those things which men plough, build, or sail, obey virtue, said Sallust. The winds and waves, said Gibbon, are always on the side of the ablest navigators. So are the sun and moon and all the stars of heaven. When a noble act is done, perchance in a scene of great natural beauty. When Leonidas and its 300 martyrs consume one day in dying, and the sun and moon come each and look at them once in the steep defile of Thermopylae, when Arnold Winkelried in the high Alps under the shadow of the avalanche gather in his side a sheaf of Austrian spears to break the line for his comrades. Are not these heroes entitled to add the beauty of the scene to the beauty of the deed? When the bark of Columbus neared the shore of America, before it the beach lined with savages, fleeing out of their huts of cane, the sea behind, and the purple mountains of the Indian archipelago around. Can we separate the man from the living picture? Does not the New World clothe his form with her palm groves and savannas as fit drapery? Ever does nature beauty steal in like year and envelope great actions? When Sir Harry Vane was dragged up the Towery Hill, sitting on his sled to suffer death as a champion of the English laws, one of the multitude cried out to him, "You never stayed on so glorious a seat." Sorry, I didn't say that right. When Sir Harry Vane was dragged up the Towery Hill, sitting on his sled to suffer death as a champion of the English laws, one of the multitude cried out to him, quote, "You never sate on so glorious a seat." End quote. Charles II, to intimidate the citizens of London, caused the patriot Lord Russell to be drawn in an open coach through the principal streets of the caused the patriot Lord Russell to be drawn in an open coach through the principal streets of the city on his way to the scaffold. Quote, but, end quote, his biographer says, the multitude imagined they saw liberty and virtue sitting by his side, in private places among sordid objects, an act of truth, of heroism, seems at once to draw to itself the sky as its temple, the sun as its candle. Nature stretches out her arms to embrace man. Only let his thoughts be equal. Greatness. Willingly does she follow his steps with the rose and the violet, and behind her lines of grandeur and grace, to the decoration of her darling child. Only let his thoughts be of equal scope, and their frame will suit the picture. A virtuous man is in unison with her works, and makes the central figure of the visible sphere. Homer, Pindar, Socrates, Phocion associate themselves fitly in our memory with the geography and climate of Greece. The visible heavens and earth sympathize with Jesus, and in common life whatsoever has seen a person of powerful character and happy genius will have remarked how easily he took all things along with him, the persons, the opinions, and the day. Nature became ancillary to a man. Number 3. There's still another aspect under which the beauty of the world may be viewed, namely as it becomes an object of the intellect. Besides the relation of things to virtue, they have a relation to thought. The intellect searches out the absolute order of things as they stand in the mind of God, and without the colors of affection, the intellectual and the active powers seem to succeed each other, and the exclusive activity of the one generates the exclusive activity of the other. There is something unfriendly in each to the other, but they are like the alternate periods of feeding and working in animals. Each appears and will be followed by the other. Therefore, does beauty which, in relation to actions, as we have seen, comes unsought, and comes because it is unsought, remain for the apprehension and pursuit of the intellect. And then again, in its turn, of the active power nothing divine dies. All good is eternally reproductive. The beauty of nature reforms itself in the mind, and not for barren contemplation, but for new creation. All men are in some degree impressed by the face of the world, some men even to delight. This love of beauty is taste. Others have the same love in such excess, that, not content with admiring, they seek to embody it in new forms. The creation of beauty is art. The production of a work of art throws a light upon the mystery of humanity. A work of art is an abstract of or epitome of the world. It is the result of expression of nature in miniature. For although the works of nature are innumerable and all different, the result of the expression of them all is similar and single. Nature is a sea of forms radically alike and even unique. A leaf, a sunbeam, a landscape, the ocean make an analogous impression on the mind. What is common to them all? That perfectness and harmony is beauty. The standard of beauty is the entire circuit of natural forms. The totality of nature, which the Italians express by defining beauty, il più nil uno. Nothing is quite beautiful alone, nothing but is beautiful in the whole. A single object is only so far beautiful as it suggests. This universal grace, the poet, the painter, the sculptor, the musician, the architect, each seek to concentrate this radiance of the world on one point, and each in his several work to satisfy the love of beauty, which stimulates him to produce. Thus is art a nature passed through the alembic of man. Thus in art does nature work through the will of a man filled with the beauty of her first works. The world thus exists to the soul to satisfy the desire of beauty. This element I call an ultimate end. No reason can be asked or given why the soul seeks beauty. Beauty in its largest and profoundest sense is one expression for the universe. God is the all-fair. Truth and goodness and beauty are but different faces of the same all. But beauty in nature is not ultimate. It is the herald of inward and eternal beauty, and is not alone a solid and a satisfactory good. It must stand as a part, and not as yet the last or highest expression of the final cause of nature. Language. Language is a third use which nature subverses to man. Nature is the vehicle of thought, and in a simple double and threefold degree, words are signs of natural facts. Number 2, particular natural facts are symbols of particular spiritual facts. Number 3, nature is the symbol of spirit. Number 1, words are signs of natural facts. The use of natural history is to give us aid in supernatural history. The use of the outer creation to give us language for the beings and changes of the inward creation. Every word which is used to express a moral or intellectual fact, if traced to its root, is found to be borrowed from some material appearance. Right means straight, wrong means twisted. Spirit primarily means wind, transgression, the crossing of a line. Supercilious, the raising of the eyebrow. We say the heart to express emotion. We say the heart to express emotion, the head to denote thought, and thought and emotion are words borrowed from sensible things, and now appropriated to spiritual nature. Most of the process by which the transformation is made is hidden from us in the remote time when language was framed. But the same tendency may be daily observed in children. Children and savages use only nouns or names of things, which they convert into verbs and apply to analogous mental acts. But this origin of all words that convey a spiritual import, so conspicuous a fact in the history of language, is our least debt to nature. It is not words only that are emblematic. It is things which are are emblematic. Every natural fact is a symbol of some spiritual fact. Every appearance in nature corresponds to some state of the mind, and that state of the mind can only be described by presenting that natural appearance as its picture. An enraged man is a lion, a cunning man is a fox, a firm man is a rock, a learned man is a torch. Lamb is innocence, a snake is subtle spite. Flowers express to us the delicate affections. Light and darkness are our familiar expression for knowledge and ignorance, and heat for love. Visible distance behind and before us is respectively our image of memory and hope. We look upon a river in a meditative hour, and it is not reminded of the flux of all things. I beg your pardon, I'll read that again. We look upon a river in a meditative hour, and is not reminded of the flux of all things. Throw stone into the stream, and the circles that propagate themselves are the beautiful type of all influence. Man is conscious of a universal soul within or behind his individual life, wherein, as in a firmament, the natures of justice, truth, love, freedom arise and shine. This universal soul he calls reason. It is not mine or thine or his, but we are its. We are its property and men. And the blue sky in which the private earth is buried, the sky with its eternal calm and full of everlasting orbs, is a type of reason, that which intellectually considered we call reason, considered in reason to nature, considered in relation to nature we call spirit. Spirit is the creator. Spirit hath life in itself, and man in all ages and countries embodies it in his language as the Father. It is easily seen that there is nothing lucky or capricious in these analogies, but that they are constant and pervade nature. These are not the dreams of a few poets here and there, but man is an analogist and studies relations in all objects. He is placed in the center of beings, and a ray of relation passes from every other being to him, and neither can man be understood without these objects, nor these objects without man. All the facts in natural history taken by themselves have no value, but are barren like a single sex. But marry it to human history, and it is full of life. Whole floors, all linears, and buffoon volumes are dry catalogues of facts. But the most trivial of these facts, the habit of a plant, the organs or work or noise of an insect, applied to the illustration of a fact, in intellectual philosophy, or in any associated to human nature, affects us in the most lively and agreeable manner. The seed of a plant. To what affecting analogies in the nature of man is that little fruit made use of in all discourse up to the voice of Paul, who calls the human corpse a seed. It is sown a natural body. It is raised a spiritual body. The motion of the earth round its axis and round the sun makes the day and the year. There are certain amounts of brute light and heat, but is there no intent of analogy between man's life and the seasons? And do the seasons gain no grandeur or pathos from that analogy? The instincts of the ant are very unimportant considered as the ants, but the moment a ray of relation is seen to extend from it to man, and the little drudge is seen to be a mother, a little body with a mighty heart, then all its habits, even that said to be recently observed, that it never sleeps, become sublime. Because of this radical correspondence between visible things and human things, savages who have only what is necessary converse in figures. As we go back in history, language becomes more picturesque until its infancy. When it is all poetry or all spiritual facts are represented by natural habit symbols, The same symbols are found to make the original elements of all languages. It has moreover been observed that the idioms of all languages approach each other in passages of the greatest eloquence and power. And as this is the first language, so is it the last. The immediate dependence of language upon nature, this conversion of an outward phenomenon into a type of somewhat in human life, never loses its power to affect us. It is this which gives that piquancy to the conversation of a strong natured farmer or backwoodsman, which all men relish. A man's power to connect his thought with its proper symbol, and so to utter it, depends on the simplicity of his character. That is, upon his love of truth and his desire to communicate it with laws. The corruption of man is followed by the corruption of language. When simplicity of character and the sovereignty of ideas is broken up by the prevalence of secondary desires, desire of riches, of pleasure, of power, and of praise, and duplicity and falsehood take place of simplicity and truth. The power of nature as an interpreter of the will is in a degree lost. New imagery ceases to be created, and old words are perverted to stand for things which are not. A paper currency is employed when there is no bullion in the vaults. In due time, the fraud is manifest, and words lose all power to stimulate the understanding of the affections. Hundreds of writers may be found in every long civilized nation who for a short time believe and make others believe that they see and utter truths, who do not of themselves clothe one thought in its natural garment, but who feed unconsciously on the language created by the primary writers of the country, those namely who hold primarily on nature. But wise men pierce this rotten diction. Wise men pierce this rotten diction and fasten words again to visible things, so that picturesque language is at once a commanding certificate that he who employs it is a man in alliance with truth and God. The moment our discourse rises above the ground line of familiar facts and is inflamed with passion or exalted by thought, it clothes itself in images. A man conversing in earnest, if he watches intellectual processes, will find that a material image more or less luminous arises in his mind, contemporaneous with every thought, which furnishes the vestment of the thought. Hence, good writing and brilliant discourse are perpetual allegories. This imagery is spontaneous. It is the blending of experience with the present action of the mind. It is proper creation. It is the working of the original cause through the instruments he has already made. These facts may suggest the advantage which the country life possesses for a powerful mind over the artificial and curtailed life of cities. We know more from nature than we can at will communicate. Its sight flows into the mind evermore, and we forget its presence. The poet, the orator, bred in the woods, whose senses have been nourished by their fear and appeasing changes, year after year, without design and without heed, shall not lose the lesson altogether. In the roar of cities or the broil of politics, long hereafter, amidst agitation and terror, and national councils in the hour of revolution, these solemn images shall reappear in their morning luster as fit symbols and words of the thoughts, which the passing events shall awaken. At the call of a noble sentiment, again the woods wave, the pines murmur, the river rolls and shines, and the cattle low upon the mountains. As he saw and heard them in his infancy, as with these forms the spells of persuasion, the keys of power are put into his hands. Number 3. We are thus assisted by natural objects in the expression of particular meanings. But how great a language to convey such peppercorn informations! Did it need such noble races of creatures, this profusion of forms, this host of orbs in heaven, to furnish man with a dictionary and grammar of his municipal speech, while we use this grand cipher to expedite the affairs of our pot and kettle, we feel that we have not yet put it to its use. Neither are able. We are like travelers using the cinders of a volcano to roast their eggs, whilst we see that that it always stands ready to clothe what we would say. We cannot avoid the question whether the characters are not significant of themselves. Have mountains and waves and skies no significance but what we consciously give them when we employ them as emblems of our thoughts? The world is emblematic. Parts of speech are metaphors because the whole nature is a metaphor of the human mind. The law of moral nature answers to those of matter as face to face in a glass. The visible world and the relation of its parts is the dial plate of the invisible. The axioms of physical translate the laws of ethics. Thus the whole is greater than its part. Reaction is equal to action. The smallest weight may be made to lift the greatest, the difference of weight being compensated by time, and many the like propositions which have an ethical as well as physical sense. These propositions have a much more extensive and universal sense when applied to human life than when confined to technical use. In like manner, the memorable words of history and the proverbs of nations consist naturally of a natural fact, selected as picture or parable, of a moral truth. Thus, a rolling stone gathers no moss, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. A cripple in the right way will beat a racer in the wrong. Make hay while the sun shines. Tea is hard to carry, a full cup even. Vinegar is the son of wine. Last ounce broke the camel's back. Long-lived trees make roots first, and the like. In the primary sense, these are trivial facts, but we repeat them for the value of their analogical import. What is true of proverbs is true of all fables, parables, and allegories. This relation between the mind and matter is not fancied by some poet, but stands in the will of God, and so is free to be known by all men. It appears to men, or it does not appear. When in fortunate hours we ponder this miracle, the wise man doubts if at all other times he is not blind and deaf. Can such things be and overcome us like a summer's cloud without our special wonder? End quote. For the universe becomes transparent, and the light of a higher laws than its own shines through it. It is a standing problem which has exercised the wonder and the study of every fine genius since the world began, from the era of the Egyptians and the Brahmins to that of Pythagoras, of Plato, of Bacon, of Leibniz, of Swedenborg. There sits the Sphinx at the roadside, and from age to age, as each prophet comes by, he tries by his fortune at reading her riddle. There seems to be a necessity in spirit to manifest itself in material forms. And day and night, river and storm, beast and bird, acid and alkali, pre-exist in necessary ideas in the mind of God, and are what they are by virtue of preceding affections in the world of spirit. A fact is the end, or last issue, of spirit. The visible creation is the terminus, or the circumference, of the invisible world. Material objects, said a French philosopher, are necessarily kind of scoria of the substantial thoughts of the Creator, which must always persevere in exact relation to the first origin. In other words, visible nature must have a spiritual moral side. This doctrine is abstruse, and Though the images of garment, scoriae, mirror, etc. may stimulate the fancy, we must summon the aid of subtler and more vital expositors to make it plain. Every scripture is to be interpreted by the same Spirit which gave it forth. It's a fundamental law of criticism, a life in harmony with nature. The love of truth and of virtue will purge the eyes to understand her text. By degrees, we may come to know the primitive sense of the permanent object of nature, so that the world shall be to us an open book, and every form significant of its hidden life and final cause. A new interest surprises us, whilst unto the view now suggested, we contemplate the fearful extent and multitude of objects, since every object rightly seen unlocks a new faculty of the soul. That which was unconscious truth becomes, when interpreted and defined in an object, a part of the domain of knowledge, a new weapon in the magazine of power, discipline. In view of the significance of nature, we arrive at once at a new fact, that nature is discipline. This use of the world includes the preceding uses as parts of itself: space, time, society, labor, climate, food, locomotion, animals, mechanical forces. Give us sincerest lessons day by day, whose meaning is unlimited. They educate both the understanding and the reason. Every property of matter is a school for the understanding, its solidity or resistance, its inertia, its extension, its figure, its divisibility. The understanding adds, divides, combines, measures, and finds nutriment, and room for its activity in this worthy scene. Meantime, reason transfers all these lessons into its own world of thought by perceiving the analogy that marries matter and mind. Number 1. Nature is a discipline of the understanding and intellectual truths. Our dealing with sensible objects is a constant exercise in the necessary lessons of difference, of likeness, of order, of being and seeming, of progressive arrangement, of ascent from particular to general, of combination to one end of manifold forces. Proportioned to the importance of the origin of the organ to be formed is the extreme care with which its tuition is provided, a care pretermitted in no single case. What tedious training, day after day, year after year, never ending to form the common sense. What continual reproduction of annoyances, inconveniences, dilemmas. What rejoicing over us of little men. What disputing of prices. What reckonings of interest. And all to form the hand of the mind, to instruct us that good thoughts are no better than good dreams unless they be executed. The same good office is performed by property and its filiale system, or debt and credit, debt grinding debt, whose iron face, the widow, the orphan, and the sons of genius fear and hate. That which consumes so much time, which so cripples and disheartens a great spirit, with cares that seem so base, is a preceptor whose lessons cannot be foregone, and is needed most by those who suffer from it most. Moreover, property which has been well compared to snow, if it fall level today, it will be blown into drifts tomorrow, is a surface action of internal machinery, like the index of the face of a clock. While now it is the gymnastics of the understanding, it is hiving in the foresight of the spirit experience and profounder laws. The whole character and fortune of the individual are affected by the least inequalities in the culture of the understanding. For example, in the perception of differences, therefore is space, and therefore time, that man may know that things are not huddled and lumped, but sundered an individual. A bell and a plough have each their use, and neither can do the office of the other. Water is good to drink, coal to burn, wool to wear, but wool cannot be drunk, no water spun, no coal eaten. The wise man shows his wisdom in separation, in gradation, and his scale of creatures and of merits is as wide as nature. The foolish have no range in their scale, but suppose every man is as every other man. What is not good they call the worst, and what is not hateful they call the best. In like manner, what good heed nature forms in us. She pardons no mistakes. Her ye is ye, and her nay is nay. The first steps in agriculture, astronomy, zoology, those first steps which the farmer, the hunter, and the sailor take, teach that nature's dice are always loaded, that in her heaps and rubbish are concealed sure and useful results. How calmly and genially the mind apprehends, one after another, the laws of physics. What noble emotions dilate the mortal as he enters into the councils of the creation, and feels by knowledge the privilege to be. His insights refines it. The beauty of nature shines in his own breast. Man is greater that he can see this, and the universe less, because time and space relations vanish as laws are known. Here again we are impressed and even daunted by the immense universe to be explored. What we know is a point to what we do not know. Open any recent journal of science and weigh the problems suggested concerning light, heat, electricity, magnetism, physiology, geology, and judge whether the interest of natural science is likely to be soon exhausted. Passing by many particulars of the discipline of nature, we must not omit to specify too. The exercise of the will or the lesson of power is taught in every event. From the child's successive possession of his several senses up to the hour when he saith, Thy will be done, he is learning the secret that he can reduce under his will not only particular events but great classes, nay, the whole series of events, and so conform all facts to his character. Nature is thoroughly mediate. It is made to serve. It receives the dominion of man, as meekly as the ass on which the Saviour rode. It offers all its kingdoms to man, as the raw material which he may mold into what is useful. Man is never weary of working it up. He forges a subtle and delicate ear into wise and melodious words. Melodious words, and gives them wing as angels of persuasion and command. One after another, his victorious thought comes up with and reduces all things until the world becomes, at last, only a realized will, the double of the man. 2. Sensible objects conform to the premonitions of reason and reflect the conscience. All things are moral, and in their boundless changes have an unceasing reference to spiritual nature. Therefore is nature glorious with form, color, and motion, that every globe in the remotest heaven, every chemical change from the rudest crystal up to the laws of life, every change of vegetation from the first principle of growth in the eye of a leaf to the tropical forest and antediluvian coal mine, every animal function from the sponge up to the Hercules shall hint or thunder to man the laws of right and wrong and echo the 10 Commandments. Therefore is nature ever the ally of religion, lends all her pomp and riches to the religious sentiment. Prophet and priest, David, Isaiah, Jesus have drawn deeply from this source. This ethical character so penetrates the bone and marrow of nature as to seem the end for which it was made. Whatever private purpose is answered by any member or part, this is public. By any member or part, this is its public and universal function, and is never omitted. Nothing in nature is exhausted in its first use. When a thing has served and ended uttermost, it is wholly new for an ulterior service. In God, every end is converted into a new means. Thus, the use of commodity regarded by itself as mean and squalid. But it is to the mind an education and a doctrine of use, namely that a thing is good only so far as it serves, that a conspiring of parts and efforts to the production of an end is essential to any being. The first and gross manifestation of this truth is our inevitable and hated training in values and wants in corn and meat. It has already been illustrated that every natural process is a version of a moral sentence. The moral law lies at the center of nature and radiates to the circumference. It is the pitch and marrow of every substance, every relation, and every process. All things with which we deal preach to us what is a fond but a mute gospel. The chaff and the wheat, weeds and plants, blight, rain, insects, sun. It is a sacred emblem from the first furrow of spring to the last stack, which the snow of winter overtakes in the fields. But to the sailor, the shepherd, the miner, the merchant, in their several resorts, have each an experience precisely parallel and leading to the same conclusion, because all organizations are radically alike. Nor can it be doubted that this moral sentiment, which just scents the ear, grows in the grain, and impregnates the waters of the world, is caught by man and sinks into his soul. The more influence of nature upon every individual is the amount of truth. The more influence of nature upon every individual is that amount of truth which it illustrates to him. Who can estimate this? Who can guess how much firmness the sea beaten rock has taught the fisherman? How much tranquility has been reflected to man from the azure sky, over whose unspotted deeps the winds forevermore drive flocks of stormy clouds and leave no wrinkle or stain? How much industry and providence and affection we have caught from the pantomime of brutes? What a searching preacher! Self-command is a varying phenomenon of health. Thank you for joining me as I read the beginning of this book thus far. I appreciate your feedback. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. It'd be much appreciated. I'm in the middle of reading from this book, which was written by Ralph Waldo Emerson. I think it was written over 150 years ago. Please let me know what you think. I appreciate your feedback, your comments, your thoughts. It's much appreciated. And also what you think of my style of reading. I'd be ever so grateful if you could let me know. Have a lovely day, and thank you for your time. Take care.